the cloud. Okay. So today I'm going to do this translucent flowers using a high key layers stack. And I'm going to share my screen and we're going to go from there. I'm going to share this screen. Share. Okay. Does everybody see too much stuff?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
Okay.
top of a sand dune.
Wow. All right. So did I share the right screen? Let's see.
Not sure. Looking at a bunch of icons.
So are people now seeing 3 purple flowers and some yellow flowers?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. All right, good. All right. So this is a simple resulting image that I did using this technique. And I cleverly didn't take photos of the equipment when I did the one I'm going to show you in a little bit. So I'm going to show you using just what I snapped when I did this little shoot. So basically, this is a technique that was pioneered by a guy named Harold Davis, who lives up in Berkeley, if you care. And the basic idea is to take photographs of flowers on a light table and take a series of photos, one EV apart, and then blend those photos in Photoshop using layer masks. And it gives the effect of more translucence than just taking a normal snap of the flowers. So the basic setup here is obviously a camera, tripod, the light table. This is Harold calls them light boxes, but if you try to buy one and put in light box, you're going to not find a light table. So that's what it is. A 50 millimeter lens. You can use a zoom lens, but you got to figure out a way to keep it from zooming as you're pointing straight down, either with rubber bands or something, if your zoom lens has that issue. So if you have a little 50 millimeter, that will work, a flower arrangement, and obviously a remote shutter release. I have a little plastic thing that just clicks and does the, my camera, Jeff's camera, anybody's camera that's within range, but any kind of a remote shutter release. If you look at my list, you'll see that I have a list of handy stuff. I picked this up from Harold. The only things that I've actually used so far are paper clips and tape, and I guess the scissors as well. So the arrangement, this is the hard part. This was just a simple thing that I, threw together with a few flowers from my backyard. So ideally, you would get this relatively flat, and you would get it so that the blossoms are pointed up towards the camera rather than at some other angle. In order to do that, what's handy is to snip the blossoms off of the stems, put a paper clip in them, and then tape the thing on the light table so that it looks straight up rather than pointing away. Moving right along, there's another shot with the paper clip. This is when I was setting the thing up. It's a little bit out of focus, I agree, but basically you can see that all the blossoms were taken off, the stalks were there, and they just kind of, or the stems, and just kind of put in there with the flowers, then later set on there. So what I'm going to show you today, I got just a cheap bouquet out of a local grocery store called Rayleigh's. And basically it just had these flowers in it. Can everybody see that basically?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Basically.
So here's just another shot. So I don't even know what all these flowers are, but these are the ones that I ended up photographing. And then I'm going to show you sort of the results. This is a preview of what you're going to see later on. this is the basic shot after I put all the brackets into Photoshop and then painted in the portions of each flower that I wanted, which I'm going to be showing you in a minute. So that's the basic processed stack. Then I take the stack, flattened it, and did processing on it. This is when I sharpened it, added some, a little bit of curve to it, obviously a little bit of saturation, that kind of thing to make it look a little better. Here is one of the just simple creative thing. I just put a background behind the thing. And then this is what Harold calls his twofer. Takes the same photograph, takes it over to the LAB and swaps the lightness channel. So basically everything that was dark becomes light and vice versa. All right. So going back to look, let's look at this. So the basic idea, obviously, is you've got your light table on the floor. You've got your camera on your tripod. Ideally, your camera is going to be absolutely square with your light table. You can see my little level here, and of course it's a little out of focus, but you would be able to see that my bubbles are in the middle. You're going to want to mount your camera in portrait mode and then drop it down through one of the notches in your ball head to get it in that position. It helps to have it in portrait because then your tripod legs aren't in the way. And you're going to end up from it's going to be about 3 feet. Mine was just slightly under a meter from your focal plane down to the light table. So what settings are you going to use? You're going to use the lowest native ISO of your camera, whatever that is, Canon 100, Nikon, I believe, is 64, whatever it is. Aperture, you're going to probably at f8 or f11. If you look, I did this little depth of field chart, 50 millimeter full frame at 98 centimeters. I've got at f8, I've got about 18 centimeters total depth of field, and 18 centimeters is about 7 inches. So you can see that there's plenty of depth of field, even at f8. If you do the same thing, if you just happen to use a 100 millimeter lens because you only have a very small arrangement, just like a couple of flowers or something, at f11, you're still going to have 6 centimeters, which is a little over 2 inches, I think. So anyway, that's your aperture focus. Again, you're gonna focus ideally somewhere in the middle of the middle of the depth of the arrangement, maybe a half or a third of the way into the arrangement to maximize. Focus, you can use manual focus. I use automatic because I'm not very good at focusing, but you want to zoom in, make sure you know what you're focusing on. And then once you've got it focused, just like last week with the panoramas, you want to turn your focus off, whether it's using back button focus or whatever you need to do to turn the focus off so you're not refocusing as you're taking your brackets. White balance. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to shoot RAWs. So you can adjust the white balance after you've got your brackets taken. Interestingly enough, if you use auto white balance, your brackets are not going to end up with the same white balance number with the same Kelvin temperature. So you're going to have to either set your white balance in your camera when you shoot, or set them afterwards, or, you could do a custom white balance by shooting the light table and saying, oh, okay, that's the color temperature of the light table, and set your camera for that, however you want to do it. But what I've done so far is simply use the evaluative, whatever that's called, that evaluative thing, shoot the brackets, get the auto, get the white balance wherever it is, and that's that. Sorry, evaluative's got nothing to do with it. It's just the white balance. All right, shutter speed. What I've been doing is, here we go, boom. Taking my first exposure at what the camera thinks is the correct exposure, again, using evaluative metering, which doesn't really matter. You could use center weighted, evaluative, whatever your camera does. The key is to have the 1 EV difference. So you can see this is at 50 millimeters f16, which was overkill for this arrangement. I could have used 11 or even f8. This is done at 1/10 of a second because my aperture was so small, but doesn't matter really. But anyway, so that's your first exposure. And then from there, you're going to get, as I say, 1 EV lighter going up. So these are the various brackets that we're going to work with in this demonstration. You can see I ended up at 10 seconds for this one. And you want to get, to the point where you're almost blown out totally. I mean, obviously a lot of it's blown out, but where you've got very little left. So that's, and you're going to end up with something like 7 or 8 brackets. Let's see, where are we? Okay, so there. And obviously, I guess it's obvious you're adjusting your shutter speed, and then taking another snap all the way through. And then Harold says you want to turn on long exposure noise reduction, which I've never really used before, but your exposure isn't that long, so it doesn't really add that much to your process, your shooting time. So might as well turn it on if Harold thinks it's a good idea. Okay. As you'll notice, these are all JPEG images, and I don't want you to be fooled. What I did is I took the RAWs, I adjusted them in the way I'm about to tell you, and then I converted them to JPEG so that there wouldn't be as much information there and as much processing time needed for this demonstration. But obviously these would be RAWs if this were for real. So anyway, so that's, and then what you do is you get your layer stack, you pick one of your images, like that one or that one, whatever seems right. And then you go in Lightroom and you set 3 things in the develop thing. You're going to set, somebody's being called. You're going to set your white balance. Obviously here, because it's a JPEG, you don't have the Kelvin temperature to set it to, but if you were a RAW, you could set it to 5500 or daylight or whatever shade, whatever you wanted to, whatever you thought looked right. So you set that. What I've been doing, as I mentioned, is I've been putting the sharpening down to 0, because after I process the stack, I then go do denoise and do the input sharpening there, and then I do the lens correction. So that's it. And then basically you're gonna take all of your images and you're gonna sync them. I'm not gonna do it now because obviously they've already been synced. But anyway, you would sync them so that all of your images have that. And then now we're gonna actually pick up demonstrations. All right, so what we're gonna do.
But then I've got a Zoom meeting going on for about another hour, so then I'll be here.
There, he's muted. All right, so the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna do an HDR blend. So HDR. And you're doing this, you may use a little bit of this HDR blend in your blending. So you do it. There it is. Auto align. Looks wonderful. Merge it. So it's creating the HDR. And it shouldn't take too long, as I say, because I'm just using little JPEGs here. So here's my HDR. All I do is because I'm crazy, I rename it so that I know what it is with the extreme numbers of my layer stack. So I know what it is. It's HDR. And I'm just going to call it demo so I remember. Anyway, so that's that. Then we're going to take all of these guys from the HDR all the way through all of the images. And we're just going to edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. And hopefully this won't take too long. This would take considerably longer if we had the full RAWs, because it just would. Okay. Are you done? I think it's done. Okay. There we go. So as you can see, we now have the layer stack. We have the darkest on the top, which is what you want, but you want to have the lightest on the bottom, but our HDR is at the bottom. So all we do is we take that and we drag it up to the, come on, go up there. We drag it up to the top, come on, there, of the layer stack. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put a black mask on each of the layers except the bottom layer. I'm going to use Tony Kuiper's panel to do this because it's much quicker. But somewhere I told you how to do, in the handout, I told you how to do it. If you don't have Tony Kuiper's panel, you know what you ought to get if you use Photoshop. So I'm adding black masks to all of this. And obviously that means that it's hiding everything. So when I do this, it's going to take us back to our bottom image, the lightest image. And that's it right there. All right. Then one thing that I figured out, and I think it works, but I haven't told Harold about it yet. But Harold, as you paint in the photos going up, when you start getting up to these guys that have backgrounds that aren't pure white, if you get outside the flower and start painting, you're going to be painting in this bad background. So what I figured out is if you pick one of these guys, you can make a mask. And this is actually probably a good one right here. And interestingly enough, if you select the sky, oops, I forgot to do something. All right. I'm gonna just turn that selection off, but but before you do that, what you want to do, oops. Sorry. There, oops. Wrong one, there. All right, is you want to paint out this crap here. So what you want to do is you want to grab your brush. B, you want to make it, pick a hard brush. And you want to go to 100% opacity, 100% flow. And you want to be painting with white. So that should be white. And if I paint on the flower instead of the mask, oops, here. This is the one I want to paint on. All right. Yeah, okay. It tricked me. It tricked me. All right. Come on. Ha, okay. Just paint out this stuff here on the, where the light table didn't cover it. Now what you want to do is select sky. And it's actually pretty good at selecting the flowers, which is what you want. Is it doing it? Yeah, it is. All right. And then you can just save that selection up. First, you want to take the inverse of that selection because what you want is the flowers and not the background. Actually, this isn't going to be perfect, but it's all right. Save. It's over here. We'll go flowers. Oops. Sorry, I forgot to do the inverse. Inverse. There we go. Now we save flowers. And we say, okay. And now if you look down here in your channels palette, you'll see that you have the mask right there. All right, I'm going to turn that off. You can see we have the marching ants. We're now down on our original lightest thing. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to paint out this crap on the sides because just because you want to. We have that brush. Oh, sorry, wrong place. Oh, still wrong place. Oh, I know. I have to turn off the selection because otherwise I can't get there. And we'll paint out that. Paint out that. And we'll paint out that. All right, now comes the magic. We're going to start up here on the second layer. We're going to paint on the mask with white, and we're going to start painting in the flowers. And what we want is now we want a relatively soft brush with opacity, let's say about 70%, and flow, let's say about 50%. And this brush size is probably okay. And we're going to just start painting. And there we go. And we just paint. Everybody see what's happening here?
Yeah.
Anybody see what's happening here?
Flowers are darkening.
Is anybody still awake?
I think so.
Boy.
Okay. All right. So
Pretty amazing, Don.
okay. So
Pretty
it's
amazing.
So it's amazing so far. All right. So everybody see what I've done here on the mask. I'm going to do one more before I turn on So I've just moved up one layer. So I'm starting to paint on this mask, and I'm starting to paint in more to bring these guys in. You can see these white, whatever they are, is up there starting to come in. We'll give this guy a little bit more. Bring this along here. These guys need to come in a little bit. There's more here. It's always kind of fun because you never really know what you have, because you can't remember what the flowers look like. Okay, does anybody know why it is that my paintbrush zips around like that?
Does that on my computer too?
Does it?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't think it used to do that. And I'm thinking that maybe something happened at some point. Anyway, I'm gonna move up one more. Now, because I want to be careful about the background, I'm gonna go down here. I'm gonna load my channel. So basically, I'm painting through this selection of the flowers, which means that I'm not going to be painting, when I paint on the mask, I'm not going to paint in anything that isn't selected. So I can't pick up any of the background. And if we want to, we can hide the marching ants because they can be distracting. So now we're starting to see these guys come in. We'll give this guy a little, oh, maybe too much. Anyway. Way too much, way too much. Okay, so we're gonna go back and we're gonna go to white. We're gonna lower the opacity down to about 50. And we're just gonna take those guys back. Now we're going back to white. I'm sorry, I went to black to paint back in the mask here. So everybody understand that? It's okay, you don't have to. No, you do have to. So we're painting on this mask and we're painting in white on the mask, which reveals this layer. Does everybody understand that?
We're all muted, so that's why we're not talking.
Okay, all right. So it's not that you're ignoring me, it's that you're muted. I'm good with that.
We are
Okay.
all nodding our heads, though.
Okay. Thank you. All right, let's do one more.
Which you can't see because you're busy showing us.
All right, we're going to do one more layer there. And we're just going to give a little bit of, around here, a little bit more. There's a little bit there that you want, probably a little bit more here. These guys are kind of disconnected because I blew it there, but don't pay any attention. Okay. There's some more flowers here that we can get. I think there's here.
So question, Don.
Yes, sir.
I think Harold sort of gradually reduces the opacity and flow of his brush as he gets to the darker pictures. Are you
Yes.
doing that too?
Yeah, I'm trying to zip through this, Jeff, but yes, he does. I think he leaves the flow at about 50%, and he described it as that's how fast the ink comes off your brush or your whatever. I don't really still, after all these years, understand flow. I just don't. So I've just been copying the 50%, but then you see, I did go down to 50% opacity. And by the time I'm done, I'm probably done at the 40%. As a matter of fact, I should probably go to 40 right now. But yes, you absolutely want to lower it down as you progress up the layer stack. The other thing that he describes is you're using less and less of each layer. He says, think of a wedding cake, and as you go up, you have less cake because it's, you know, a wedding cake, right? So for this layer, I'm actually probably not going to paint in very much. And that's probably it. Maybe a little bit there. And then I'm going to skip these two layers altogether. And I'm going to go in and this is the HDR. And what Harold describes is using the HDR to add a little definition to like the centers of the flowers. So I can't say that I'm necessarily doing what Harold would do, but anyway, so I use a little bit of this in places. This leaf could probably use a little bit more. Anyway, so that's it. This is the layers. Question?
A question, yeah. When you're doing, is the idea by going layer to layer, I mean, if you skip the first 2 or 3 pictures and you just started at the 4th picture, I guess the purpose of starting low is that you want to get as much light flower as you can first, and then just put little bits of darker flowers in there. Is that what you're trying to do here?
I think that's right, Gail.
As you go up, you just take little bits of the darker flowers, but mostly you want the lower pictures, the lightness.
Yeah, you want if you look at the at the masks.
Yeah.
The first mask, as most has a lot. This one, probably because my first 2 layers were so light, I used a lot of this 3rd layer. But when we get up to the 4th layer, I'm using less and less. And then the 5th layer, I used very little. You can see that on the mask.
Yeah. So
And then I'm skipping these 2 layers altogether. I don't think we need them for this particular thing. And then I used a little bit of the reserved HDR to kind of bring in some areas. Does that help?
yeah, no, that's exactly what I wondered.
Okay. So now we're done. I mean, that's our processed layer stack. And what we're going to do is we're going to save it back to Photoshop. I'm sorry, Lightroom. And here it is. This guy right here. That's it.
Nice.
Because you can tell because it says edit TIFF. So what I do, because I'm compulsive, is I go in here and I'm going to renumber this 4257, and I'm going to call it layer stack dash A, and I'm also going to call it demo to make sure that I delete it when we're done. But what I'm trying to say is you preserve this processed layer stack so that if you ever want to go back and say, oh, I did a terrible job painting that thing in, you can either go in and tinker with that, or you can just put new black masks on your layer stack and start over again. But you preserve this as part of what you've done. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to take this same image. Oops, what did I just do? Oh, probably renamed it. It's probably there. There it is. And we're going to take it back over to Photoshop. So what we're going to do is we're going to edit a copy. And by editing a copy, it'll be in Lightroom when we come back. So we're going to take that to Photoshop. Okay, and now we're going to flatten this image, which somewhere there's keystrokes, but if you use Tony's panel, there it is. It's flattened. So now what I want to do is I want to take it and I want to noise reduce and I want to sharpen. So I'm going to take that layer. I'm going to duplicate it, duplicate the layer. I'm going to call this noise AI. I think in my notes, I say you could convert that to a smart object. One of these days, Neil's going to tell us why we would care to do that. But for this demo, I'm not going to do it. But I'm just going to take it over to Topaz Labs, Denoise AI. I'm invoking a plugin. Here it is. So it's set for the Denoise AI mode in auto, which is what I've been using because I can't really tell. I don't know whether you're going to be able to see on the screen what it's doing. Can people see a difference there as I move the little up and down vertical white line?
No,
See a
really.
thing.
I'm sorry?
I can't see a difference.
Can't see a thing.
Okay, anyway, on my screen, it looks much better when you, the stuff on the right side than on the left side, it looks a whole lot better. And this is with JPEG. So anyway, this denoise thing really is great. Anyway, we'll apply that. It doesn't really matter. You can't see it anyway. But so the point being that the first step that I do is to take it over there and apply the sharpening, and there can't be a lot of noise in the thing anyway, because why would there be? But anyway, so that's that. So then I'm going to add a curves layer. It's here somewhere. There it is. Curves layer. And I'm going to kind of do this a simple way. I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to lighten it, basically do a slight S curve. And hopefully it'll look a little better contrast wise. And we could play with that, but we're not going to today. And then here we go. I'm going to add an HSL layer, because that's what I do. And then I just go through and I just play with the saturation of individual colors. Like I'm going to make those little guys in the middle nice and red. Yellows, got to be really careful because almost everything here is yellow, even though it doesn't necessarily look like it. So one of the things that you can do is do a separate HSL layer, adjust for the greatest saturation that you want, put a black mask on, and then paint in where you want it. I'm not going to do that, but you could do that. Greens, even though it looks like there's green, there's probably not a whole lot of it, a little bit. So we'll just play with that. And then magentas, these little guys over here are going to get a little magenta tinge to them. And maybe those guys in the middle got too red, but again, you could add a mask to a new layer and just do the adjustments that you want. Okay, so now this is a refinement. I haven't figured out whether you could do this with, these guys over here, dodge and burn layers, but this is the way that Harold does them. But anyway, he takes this duplicate layer and he duplicates it again. And I'm going to call it multiply darken. course, you guys can't see it because it's over on my other screen, but there it is. I called it that. So here it is, darkened. Oh, well, close. Move it to the top of the layer stack. Change the blend mode to multiply. Now I'm going to add a black mask to it. Black mask. And then I'm going to, looks like I already have my paintbrush. 40% opacity is probably a good place, 50% flow. We've got a, make it a little bigger. And then the question is, any place that looks, ooh, what have I done? What have I done? Oh, stupid. What I'm trying to do is, this is going to darken parts that are, because I added the multiply, so this is going to darken portions of the thing that look like they could be a little bit darker. So wherever we think needs to be a little darker, we can darken it this way. So there we go. That was fun. And then we do another one. Duplicate layer. This one we're going to call screen lighten. Okay. Again, we're going to move it to the top of the layer stack. We're going to change this to screen. Makes it nice. We're going to add a black mask to it. And then wherever we think we want to lighten stuff, like here, maybe here, you get the idea. So, and again, I suspect you could do that with dodge and burn layers or whatever, but that's the way Harold does it. So there you have it. Okay, now here's the neat trick that Harold does. There's actually a couple of neat tricks, but what we're going to do here is we're going to add an empty layer at the top, and we're going to call it painted translucence. Something like that. All right. And we're going to zoom in. And right here, you see where this petal, where this stem is underneath this petal. Wouldn't it be nice if we could make that petal look like it was more translucent so that you could see the stem through it?
Oh, yeah.
So that'd be cool, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go up here to the little eyedropper, and we're going to sample that stem. Boom. Okay. So now our brush color is that stem. We're going to get our brush tool back. We're going to use a relatively low opacity, soft, small, and we're just going to paint on this layer there. See, oops, I'm not very good at painting, but you see, it now looks like that stem goes right behind that petal, doesn't it?
It does.
Is that cool or what?
Yeah.
So, you know, and you can do that other places, but that's the general idea, is to find places in your image. I've tried it with this and it never worked out very well, but anyway. But depending on your photo and how much of those kinds of overlaying situations you had, the other thing that Harold talked about was he called it a sneaky trick, and it really was. He had two blossoms, and one blossom was over the other, and he copied. He had I don't know, multiple centers. Don't ask me why, but he had multiple centers. So he copied one center that was not involved in the overlay, and he flipped it, reversed it, and painted it in over a center that was partially under another blossom to make it look like that blossom was more translucent. It was really neat. Anyway, so now that we've got this all done, we're going to save this. Control save. So this is our processed saving. It's saved. Okay. Here we are. Demo edit. That's our processed image. We can compare it to this was our layer stack process. We now have, processed it. We're going to, what I call now is I call this, you're going to call it whatever you want, but I call it V0 so that I know it's my basic edited version from layer stack A. So this is my processed version. And now if I have additional versions, which we're going to have in a second, that'll be V1, V2 for the creative things that we do using that basic processed image. So creative things, lots of creative things you could do. I listed some things here in my outline. Add a background, add a texture, add a blur, edit the colors, use Topaz, On1, Luminar, whatever to add looks, et cetera, et cetera. But what I did was I did a simple, I'm going to do a simple background. So again, from here, we're going to edit in Photoshop. We're going to edit a copy. There it is. Oh, we're going to do that. Now, we don't need all of these because we've already got the version that has all of that. So we're going to flatten the image. Flatten. All right. Now, what we want to do is we want to find a nice background. So I'm going to go back to Lightroom. I'm going to look at my stash of backgrounds. And I'm going to look at this one, which is Morganti art paper number 5. And I'm going to say, oh, okay, let's use that one. So I'm going to edit in Photoshop. I'm going to edit the original because all I'm going to do is I'm going to copy it to that other image. I don't need another copy of it. So here it is. So in order to copy it there, so has anybody been successful in dragging images from Lightroom into Photoshop and having them open in Photoshop?
Yes.
No. So what I do is I just say duplicate the layer, and then Photoshop will give you a window and you can choose the other file to duplicate it to.
Wait a minute, say that again, Jeff.
So you can try to duplicate this layer, and Photoshop will give you a little window asking you where you want to duplicate it to. So you choose the other file, and then it will put it in the other file.
Oh, I see.
duplicating it
So
in
I could say duplicate this. Okay, I think I've got you. Yeah, for some folks, demonstrations that I've seen, people were able to just, have Lightroom and Photoshop both open on their computer and just click on something in Lightroom and just drag it over and have it open right in, it has a layer in their image in Photoshop. And I just can't
requires
go ahead.
pushing down the shift key at the appropriate time and letting it go at the appropriate time.
I know, and I've tried it and I can't get it to work. So
I don't
anyway,
need to see it first. I just use place embedded in my Photoshop file and then go grab it and it automatically puts it in there. Place embedded on Photoshop. It'll open up your Finder and
oh, you can then just go find it.
yeah,
And so it embeds it in the
into the
file.
layer stack. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, let's try that, shall we? So if we close this, so place embedded, where is that?
Under File,
File.
down 4 sections, keep going. There you
Place
go.
embedded.
Now go where your Morganti art paper 5 is and grab it.
That assumes that I know where it is. I think I do.
There it is.
Place. Ha!
Wow.
It works.
I'm glad we have these little sessions, guys. Okay, so it looks like we're gonna have to stretch this guy out a little bit to cover. So
It's already selected. It was selected.
Oh, okay, well, you're saying I shouldn't have to do anything very mysterious there.
Right, it
All
was
right.
already ready to go.
Got it, okay. All right, so there we go. Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna unlock that. We're gonna drag this back down here. We're gonna take that. We're gonna change the opacity to 15%. This is Harold's formula. We're gonna duplicate layer. Sure, we're going to say this is multiply 85% just for the fun of it. And there it'll be, and we're going to actually change that to multiply, and we're going to change the opacity to 85%. And there it is.
Wow.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so then of course we would save this because we're control save. And there we are. So now we're going back to Lightroom. Oops. And we're going back to, demonstration there. And so I'm just wondering, has anybody else discovered? So here. So this is the one we just did, because we had V0. This was our wonderful, the processed image that we did. And then this one is the copy that was made. And we just added the background too, because it's edit, right? So you would think it would have the background, wouldn't you?
No, it wouldn't, because you didn't import it from Lightroom when you made that change. When you did place embedded, you took it directly into Photoshop and it wasn't linked to Lightroom then.
Oh,
There.
Yeah, to get it in Lightroom, you have to go and import it now.
No, I don't, Ernie, I don't think so. I think it's there. Okay.
Oh, well, there it is.
Yeah, because I was working on a copy. So whatever I did in Photoshop, when I saved it, it went back to the copy,
Oh, good.
right? Does that make sense? And the only thing is, when I go back to the library module, that whatever I've done in Photoshop doesn't appear until I go to the develop module and it's there. And then when I go back to the library module, the changes are there. It's just, I don't know why it does it, but it does it.
Oh,
There
there
are
it
a
is.
few bugs in the system. You don't expect more than that for your $10 a month, do you?
Yeah, okay. So we still have some time here. Now we're going to do the final thing. We're going to go back to our V0 demo. And once again, we're going to edit in Photoshop. only this time we're going to edit the original because we're really not going to edit it. So it's going to open in Photoshop. There it is. Boom. And what we're going to do is we're going to make 2 copies. Dupe image, that'll do it. Dupe image. Oh, well, that wasn't very good. Flatten that duped image. Actually, we're not going to do that because that's just going to confuse the heck out of me. Image. Oh, duplicate. There we go. Now, we're going to call this. Oops. We're going to call this LAB inversion. Now we're going to duplicate the merged layers only. So there it is. And then we're going to go back to this guy. And we're going to do that again. Image, duplicate. And this is going to be called the L channel inversion. And we're going to duplicate merge layers only. Okay. So now we got 2. We got that guy. This guy is R1. We're not going to play with that. We're going to close it. So now we've got one called the lab inversion. And that's the one we're going to do first. All right. So we're going to change the color deal. Okay, image mode. We're going to go to LAB color. Boom. There we are. All right. We're going to look at our channels. We're going to make sure that all the eyeballs are on and that no channel is selected. You see, we've got lightness A and B channels there. So we're going to go to image adjustments, invert. Oh, it turned blue. Okay, so now we're going to save that for the fun of it. Actually, we're not going to save it because we don't really care. Because this is just a demo and we would save it if we, oops, if we wanted to. All right. So this is our L channel inversion. So now what we're going to do is we're going to also move this over to the LAB. Now we want to work only on the lightness channel. So we're going to select that. It's going to turn all those other eyeballs off. We're going to turn them back on so we can see what we're doing, but we're only working on the lightness channel. We're going to go over and we're going to invert there. So that kind of looks like what we had before. And now we're going to play with it. So what Harold does is he does adds a layer and does a curves adjustment. But I'm going to just do a curves adjustment layer here and see if I can get the same thing to happen. And he just pulls the heck out of the white. So we'll do that. And now we're going to change this mask to black. There we go. Now with a relatively floppy brush tool with a relatively floppy brush. So yeah, we've got floppy, bigger there, So let's try 40% and 50%. So now we're just going to paint in a little bit of lightness where we want to, just to make it look pretty. And since this is just a nice demonstration, we're just going to do this. Let's give some to this guy here. Anyway, we're just trying to spruce up our inversion here. Here, whatever you want to do, whatever makes good, whatever floats your boat, as they say. All right, we're going to do that. So now we're going to move this back to RGB. If we were doing this for real, we would save a copy of this thing, but we're not, so we're not going to save it. So we're simply going to flatten it, flatten there, because in order to move it back, you want to flatten it first. Image mode, RGB color. Okay, so now we're back at RGB color. So now we're going to add this guy. I'm just going to do it the old-fashioned way because I kind of know how to do it this way. So now we've got that guy there. All right, we're going to change the blend mode to exclusion, which is why we needed to move it back. We're going to add a black mask to it. And now, again, with a relatively light brush and a floppy brush, we're just going to add in a little bit of this blue here. This is what Harold does. I'm not sure quite whether I like it, but I'm just going to show you the techniques. There we go. And just kind of fun. There we go. And that's it. So we could save that puppy. Oh, it wants us to save on the computer. Up there. Okay. Oh, now I am going to have to import it because I made the copies over in Photoshop. Not that we care, but here we go. So while we're waiting for the import thing, any questions, comments, thoughts?
Great presentation.
Thank you. So does it look like, there it is. We'll import that.
Fascinating. Fascinating.
Import, okay. So there it is. So that was our L channel inversion. There's a lot of steps to it.
Yes.
And it looks, maybe confusing, but it's actually kind of straightforward. I did this outline. I try to do outlines like that with everything because I can't remember anything. So, I do these outlines and so if I need to, I can go back and say, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. So anyway, I was kind of captivated by Harold's website and photos. And I bought his book on garden photography, which has a section on this in there. And it's kind of, just kind of fun, just kind of different. And so anyway, I bought a little, $75 light table, cheapie from Amazon. After doing a couple on my iPad, I said, no, I need a little something bigger. So anyway, that's it.
Very good.
Very good.